Facebook is an idealistic and optimistic company. And as Facebook has grown, people everywhere have gotten a powerful new tool for staying connected to the people they love, for making their voices heard, and for building communities and businesses.
But what about layoffs, shrink in ad revenues, closures of news businesses? You just heard the co-founder and CEO of Facebook, now known as Meta, Mark Zuckerberg. And this was his testimony from 2018 before a joint hearing in the US Congress as the company faced data breaches and privacy scandals. Zuckerberg's Facebook back then faced a new scrutiny over how it collects and shares information about its users. But you already know that. So we are here to talk about another issue that US big tech is facing, and it is not restricted to just one part of the world. Time and again, several countries, including India, have raised the matter of news on social media. Countries want to make tech giants like Google and Facebook pay for the news content they display on their platforms. Let's begin with the most recent one. Canada has unveiled draft rules for a law to compel internet giants to pay publishers for news content. The bill aims to support a struggling Canadian news sector that has seen a flight of advertising dollars and hundreds of publications closed in the last decade. The proposed law targets only Google and Meta, which control about 80% of all online advertising revenues in Canada. The Trudeau government estimated it could cost the two companies a combined $230 million Canadian dollars by requiring them to make fair commercial deals with Canadian outlets for the news and information that is shared on their platforms or face binding arbitration. According to the draft regulations published on 1 September, the measures would apply to companies with global annual revenues in excess of 1 billion Canadian dollars and that operate a search engine or social media platform actively used by at least 20 million Canadians and that distributes news. Meta reacted by calling the bill fundamentally flawed and vowed to continue blocking access in Canada to news articles on its Facebook and Instagram platforms, which it started doing on 1st August. Google, which has also voiced opposition to the Online News Act, said it would carefully study the proposed regulations to assess whether they address its major structural challenges. Canadian Heritage Minister noted that Canadians have come to rely on digital platforms for news and information. But we all know it's not just the Canadians. We all have started relying on digital platforms vastly for news and information. After Australia, Canada, and France, India too is reportedly putting the final touches to a new piece of legislation that would make tech giants like Google and Facebook pay for the news content they display on their platforms.
Traditional news media, they make heavy investments, employing anchors, journalists, reporters. They gather the news, they verify the news, and they deliver credible information. And advertisement is the main source of revenue for the news industry. Sir, but in the past few years, with the advent of tech giants like Google, Facebook, YouTube, the largest share of advertisement is taken away by these tech giants.
If implemented, the proposed law would compel global tech majors such as Alphabet, which is the owner of Google and YouTube, Meta, which is the owner of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, Twitter, and Amazon, to pay Indian newspapers and digital news publishers a share of the revenue they earn by using original content produced by these news outlets. The need for the law stems from the fact that while the tech giants earn revenue from putting up news content from the media houses, they fail to share the earnings fairly. For news publishers, there has been a growing concern that these digital news intermediaries have opaque revenue models heavily biased towards themselves. There has been a global fight back against big tech's abuse of its dominant position on the internet. The news industries in several countries have been victims of exploitative and monopolistic practices. And now, countries are starting to look for ways to tackle and curb the menace through legislation and/or fines and penalties. Countries like France and Australia have introduced specific laws in order to provide a level playing field for their domestic news publishers, while negotiating techno-commercial contracts with big tech. However, these moves are not just for the benefit of the media companies. Even consumers will benefit from it. There has been a growing worry that platforms such as Google and Facebook profit off fake news because of the way their algorithms are structured. For example, in 2022, Google was believed to serve 48% of all its ad traffic to news sites that peddled fake or misleading news. Facebook too has been accused of promoting misinformation over factual news, as was seen during the 2016 US elections and the COVID-19 pandemic. While traditional news media have self-regulatory mechanisms or third-party oversight over their content, big tech channelizes all kinds of news with little or no oversight. A sweeping set of reforms that reduces incentives for misinformation will rein in the menace of fake news to a great extent. Securing fair pay for the news content they generate will provide a steady and significant revenue stream for the media houses. This revenue can be utilized to overhaul their digital news portals, look beyond the rat race of traffic, page views, and SEO rankings, and focus on developing high-quality, varied, and accurate content for the readers. Having more funds at their disposal will enable news establishments to hire more journalists and pay their existing employees better. This will incentivize better quality journalism and also help publishers start getting consumers to pay directly for content. In turn, this will reduce reliance on digital advertising streams. It is no secret that as revenue shrinks, the news industry takes shortcuts to keep the cost of business low in an effort to remain afloat. An influx of funds from digital platforms for the news they generate would enable media houses to loosen their purse strings, channel resources where they really matter, and develop newer, slicker, more consumer-friendly ways of disseminating news. In 2022, Google and Facebook took about 4/5 of the £14 billion spent in 2019 on digital advertising in the UK, while national and local newspapers took less than 4%. Facebook and Google have voluntarily agreed to invest around £600 million each over 3 years on journalism initiatives globally. In Canada, Google and Meta have a combined 80% share of the $14 billion in online ad revenue seen in the country in 2022. At the same time, news outlets have seen their advertising revenue shrink, forcing layoffs, a loss of media coverage in small and rural communities, and over 400 closures of Canadian news businesses between 2008 and 2023. The government says 69% of Canadians access news online, but only 11% pay for it. Facebook has also signed commercial deals with 18 news publishers in Canada as part of its news innovation test, in which it pays media for the ability to link to additional news stories not already posted on Facebook. But the question remains, is that enough?